Hi, and welcome to Chapter 16. We are beginning in Chapter 16 for this section of the course, primarily because I like to work from the foot up to the head. And so to start that, you just watched a video over the anatomy of the foot and the ankle and the lower leg. And so hopefully you have a deeper appreciation for how much is going on down there. So what I have here behind me is a kind of a simple little diagram of the ankle, and I have some ligaments that are drawn here on this side. But what you can see over here is there are three statements, one, and they all have to do with anatomy. One is 26 bones in the foot, and so basically what I'm doing is I'm counting the calcaneus and the talus and the navicular and the cuneiforms all the way down here to the cuboid, and 14 different metatarsals, tarsals, and phalanges. So going from that, I go down and I see that there are 33 total joints and 112 ligaments. So if I go back a few modules, I'm thinking about the one where I talk about what a sprain is. There's a whole lot of opportunity for injury just by some of this anatomy information that we've obtained just in this video. So as we go forward today, for this video, what I want to do is I want to focus on ankle sprains and ankle fractures. Now, this is one of many videos that are set forth to talk about ankle sprains, but in this one specifically, I just want to give you kind of a quick look into how it happens and some associative injuries that could happen, and that mostly being fracture. Many of us have had ankle sprains in the past, and we have been in such pain and such disability that we may have perceived that there could be a fracture. And some of us maybe even had that x-ray and to find out that it wasn't, and it was completely to our disbelief because we really felt like that pain and dysfunction were so great that it had to be a fracture. And so that's kind of one of the directions I want to come from in this video. Many of your athletes are going to believe that they have a fracture, and it will a lot of times be up to you as the coach, athletic trainer, possibly a physician or nurse to make the decision on whether or not that athlete should be referred to an emergency department for radiographs. Now, what we need to understand is that many times with this ankle injury, we are going to see a very common denominator, and that is this movement right here called inversion. Inversion happens almost 85% of all ankle injuries is from an inversion incident. Now, I've seen some references that would say it's up to 99%, but for your purpose, the text says 85%. But still, you get the picture that most ankle sprains or ankle injuries are from an inversion incident. And so what that is the foot plantar flexes or goes down. It would be like you coming up on your tippy toe. As you go down on your foot, your body shifts and lets that foot come in. Now, when that happens, there's a lot of displacement and potential injury that could occur. Now, I want to throw this at you. When the human body is running, not just walking but running, and many sports are consist of a running component. When the human body runs, it takes 2 to 4 times the body weight over the ankle and foot, and so we see a great increase in the physics demanded on these joints just by adding in the component of running. Now, if you take those same physics and you apply them to a foot that doesn't have a good support base, specifically when it goes into inversion, you see that the physics are transmitted no longer on a sturdy bone and joint, but rather on a ligament independently, and therefore injury occurs. Most injuries from inversion incidences are that of a sprain nature. However, sometimes we see a fracture, and I'll get into that here in just a second. So, what actually happens? Well, from the video, you saw several ligaments, and I'm just going to point out 3 and then mention one that's not on this diagram. But for the most part, we see the injury occurring after inversion to this ligament right here called the anterior talofibular ligament, and that is in your text. But the anterior talofibular ligament is the one that takes the most of these injuries. Right behind that is a ligament that attaches from that from that fibula down to the calcaneus, called the calcaneofibular ligament. And then last but not least, there is a ligament on the back side of that fibula that attaches to that talus, called the posterior talofibular ligament. Now, all three of these ligaments are susceptible to some stretching and some possible tearing. But what we know is we can look at these, and because of things like point tenderness, pain, loss of function, and instability by special tests, we can assess how bad this ankle injury is. Now what we'll do is we'll give a assignment of a grade to the individual ligament of being torn or stretched, but we will give the whole ankle injury itself the terminology of degree, and that's in your text as well, and we'll kind of address that in the next video. What we also know is that when that happens, sometimes the instability can be so great that it could cause some fractures to occur. So where do these fractures occur? Most of the time, if a fracture does occur, it's going to occur in this area of the fibula right here, which is mostly in that distal 6 centimeters, and you can see that written here, and I'll address that here in just a moment. But also in the distal 6 centimeters, which is not in view here, of the tibia as well, which is the bigger bone in the lower leg. On the other side, there is a ligament called the deltoid ligament, named so because it is in the shape of a deltoid, or kind of a triangle. And you can see that in your text as well. But we see most fractures here. We also see some fractures occurring here in the navicular bone, as well as over here in the base of the 5th metatarsal. And this is called a Jones fracture. And what we know is that these fractures occur from mostly, again, this inversion incidence. Now, if we go down here, what we see is this thing called the Ottawa ankle rules. And I have 3 of them written here where you can see on your screen. But the Ottawa ankle rules basically were developed because we needed some objective means in determining whether an ankle injury deserved radiographs. Meaning, does this kid need to go to get x-rays? Again, like I said, many times we've been in disbelief because we didn't have an ankle fracture when we were certain we did, because we heard a noise that sounded like a bone breaking, which was actually the ligament tearing. That's called a pop. That's just technically how we refer to it. But they'll feel a pop and that ligament is tearing. Maybe they felt more than one pop. And so those sounds and feelings of popping are somewhat intimidating, and they make us feel like it's a bone when it's not. It's just something that was binding bone together. So we developed these things called the Ottawa ankle rules. And what we know is that there will be pain, but how much pain is kind of the question. So if there is pain over the distal 6 centimeters of the tibia or the fibula, and so what you have to do is you have to be willing to go get a tape measure and find and palpate this bone. Now, like I'll say in the next video, but I'll kind of begin this now, you really need a solid base in anatomy before you can really do much evaluation anyways, as far as orthopedic injuries are concerned. But when I start to palpate that fibula, I will look for palpable pain, point tenderness over that distal 6 centimeters of the tibia or the fibula, most commonly the fibula. Next thing I'll do is I'll come to that navicular and I'll push on it and I'll see if there's pain on that navicular. Again, you're going to have pretty good anatomy skills before you can palpate a bone and know confidently that it is that bone that you're touching. The next thing, again, go to that 5th head of that metatarsal. This one's unique because typically as I press on it, I will feel a cracking if there is a fracture there, and that lets me know that there's probably a bone break, but the patient will also let you know because they won't let you push on it very long either. And then the 4th thing is this: can that patient walk 4 continuous steps? If they can, then they have probably not got a fracture. That's a probably. We don't know for sure. We're saying that based off of what they are able to do. Always, if when in doubt, send them for an x-ray. That is the best rule to follow. In the next video, I'll talk about more about how to evaluate one of these things right here. See you then.